Hello my friends and welcome to our second Ups and Downs for a Black Mirror episode. Thank you so much to all the lovely feedback on the first one that we did. It was just sort of an experiment to see if we could do something a little bit new, and it seems to have had positive reactions. So really, thank you so much everyone. We do see your comments, we very much appreciate your comments, and that's all I can comment on that right now. Going into this episode, we have USS Callister into Infinity, the long-awaited sequel. I know on this channel it looks like, Sean, it's been 4 days. Yes, but the first USS Callister episode came out in 2017. So it's actually been quite a bit of a wait. So it's been exciting. We've had to wait quite a long time, still not as long as we've been waiting to a sequel to Star Trek Beyond, but sure, listen, that's not what we're here to talk about today. Before we jump in, where did we leave off? Robert Daly, bit of a creep, last we saw dying in his own private server. The crew of USS Callister flying off into the Infinity, and we also had our real life counterparts who'd had a hell of a day. Looking at you, Kristen Milotti. There's been a lot of buzz about this episode, particularly being a sequel to such a popular episode of Season 4 of Black Mirror. Did they stick the landing? Let's find out. Join me for all the ups and downs for Black Mirror Season 7, Episode 6, USS Callister into Infinity. We get a little bit of a recap on what happened in the previous episode. Remember Jesse Plemons' Robert Daly? He was a monster, as evidenced by reusing the footage of when he Charlie X'd Nanette Cole's face. Don't like this guy. Glad he's dead. This sets up the scene for our characters still on board the USS Callister. Update, apparently they've learned how to sleep. Remember last time when they weren't able to do that? That's surely a positive development, that they're getting normal human bodily functions, right? Anyway, our first up of the week goes to that title card. It's very reminiscent of the Kelvin universe, but also in the same sort of humor of the original. You get Captain Nanette Cole going, Jesus Christ, boom, it's a title card. Look out for a lot of humor like that in this episode. We quickly learn that our heroes have become something like marauders, flying through the game trying to steal credits from other players. These credits are to combat some ongoing issues on their own ship. So they find a group of likely targets, and before they can teleport down and attack them, we are brought to taken up what is effectively a lobby for online gamers, just sitting there waiting, especially when they're waiting for Morris, who's waiting to finish his lasagna. Sorry, that was hilarious to me. I don't know why, but I'm a lasagna fan, what can I say? The imagery here is pretty cool. You know, you can see ideas of Delta Vega from Star Trek 09. You have one of the characters wielding a weapon that is most clearly inspired by Darth Maul's double-ended lightsaber from Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which I will defend, by the way, as it was my first Star Wars in the cinema. We were told in advance of this episode that this one would be less Star Trek than the first USS Callister, that this would be a more Star Wars inspired episode. And I've got to say, I disagree with that. Perhaps that may have been the intention, but I still think this is more of a Star Trek episode than it is anything else. Perhaps it's just an evolved form of it. For example, when Cole and Nate beam down to this planet, they're wearing armor which is very reminiscent of a mix between the Discovery tactical armor and the Zhat Vash armor from Picard's first season. Also, I love when just random things get shouted out. For example, like gamers trying to speak about sport. Now, I'm not going to say gamers can't be fans of sport, because you're probably looking at me going like, Sean, what on earth would you know about gaming? Very fair question. I know that as much of a Star Trek fan as I am, I know next to nothing about sport. I did, however, pick up on the name Wrexham because I've seen the series on Disney+. I know it's a football club owned by Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. Maybe I get back to talking about what I know about. For example, Taken Up. God, that USS Callister is a beautiful ship. I really, really like the design of this. We gave it an up, obviously, in the previous episode. I'm giving it an up again here, because if you look, it's so retro-futuristic. You can see inspirations, things like Forbidden Planet, like the 1950s War of the Worlds, but also look at that gorgeous deflector dish at the front of it. Does that not remind you of the Enterprise D? The color of it, maybe more so the Enterprise A. It just manages to, I think, walk that fine line of, think Twilight Zone, think Lost in Space, that idea of what spaceships would look like in the future, but it's so hammered in with the aesthetic of, I suppose, what we currently think the future is going to look like. After a bit of a scuffle on the planet, Cole is injured and she and Nate both beam up to the ship. I want to get it down out of the way, and the down is the fact that Elena is blue. Now, you might be like, Sean, will you have a bit of fun? I like the gag, just the reason is a bit So obviously they just wanted to have that image again. Elena is blue, looks great on her. Yes, it does. That's cool. But, oh, it's because of her eczema. Could just not have done a wee bit better than that. I do like the explanation, though, of why they are now becoming Marauders. It's that it costs credits to run anything because, as Dudani says, this game is monetizing the shit out of everything. Listen, I may not be a gaming expert, but that much I know, that everything is microtransactions these days. Everything. I mean, any platform, any game, anything, pick it, and there's going to be microtransactions. It is true of Star Trek games, as well as it is true of any other game as well. For example, there's a rather large online Star Trek game that I know comes with microtransactions. Look, it's everywhere, and I do like that they call it out. We get a little bit of levity when Elena offers to, would you like me to bandage tit? Oh, because I like Cole's response as well. She's like, nah, it's fine, I missed the nipple. Nipples become a thing in this episode. Keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for the nipples. I love my job. As she goes, though, to patch herself up, Nate follows her to her quarters. And we get a little bit of here's where we are now exposition dump. We need the credits to run the ship. We're injured. We have people chasing us. But Nate saying, look, you're a good captain. She disagrees. She also drops the not at all Chekhov's gun of, if I could push a button and go back to my old life, I would. But before we get there, down for the lack of Michaela Cole and how it's not handled. In advance of this video, I wanted to see if I could find kind of a solid reason as to why Michaela Cole wasn't in USS Callister Into Infinity. And there's an interview that Charlie Brooker gave with Entertainment Weekly where he 100% said it was scheduling. They just couldn't schedule everyone to do this. And look, I've no reason not to believe him. I'm not saying that. It's that everyone else did. Do you know what I mean? It's just a bit like, I'll chalk it up to unfortunate, and these things do happen, but the episode suffers with the lack of her. In the game, we get, I should pause to say, I'm about to discuss a spoiler from Season 7 of Deep Space Nine. Season 6 and Season 7 of Deep Space Nine. Okay, so I want to give fair warning, just in case you haven't seen those seasons yet. For me, it's very Terry Farrell Jadzia Dax. We are told that Shania was killed 2 weeks before the events of this episode take place. Cole, you know, in fairness, Krista Milotti sells it, but Cole says, I can still smell her blood. She was killed in front of me. It's a bit horrific, but it just whacks of, you couldn't get Michaela Cole back. And that's the explanation we're given in the game. It's also the only time she's referred to. And when we go into the real world, she's just never mentioned. So she's obviously, we have to assume, moved on from her job in the Callister company. And it's, you know, it's just annoying because she's so obviously not being talked about. And yes, it's very like, particularly the Season 7 episode, The Emperor's New Cloak. At this point, Jadzia Dax had died and we had had several episodes with Ezri Dax and Nicole DeBoer. But when we get to the Mirror Universe, oh, I can't believe your friend Jadzia died recently. Isn't that sad? Anyway, here's Mirror Ezri. That frustration aside, I want to give an up 2, cutting to Cole's arrival in the Callister office. It's directly paralleling our introduction to real-life Daily in the original episode. She's in the elevator, the color palette is very washed out, she sort of has to elbow her way through the crowd to get there, taken up to the fact that Elena's still there at the reception and she's still swiping. Here is where we also find out how much time has passed. It's been about 18 months in universe since the events of USS Callister. It's suggested that it's taken a little bit longer in the game. Later on in the episode, we get a further explanation that time inside the game moves differently from in the real world. In the real world, a shrine to Daily has just been placed by Walton, played by returning Jimmy Simpson, on the reception because, as we find out, there's a reporter coming. Taken up Jimmy Simpson in this episode. He gets a lot more to do this time around because we spend a lot more time with real world Walton. In many ways, I wish we didn't spend more time with real world Walton, but he makes a very effective villain. In the previous episode, he was more of a presence, I guess, but we were so focused on Daily that we didn't really spend any time with real world Walton. Here, you see things about how dismissive he is of the staff working for him. Kabir comes in to try and explain the issue with these no-tag players running around fragging people in the game. He doesn't know what fragged means, and he doesn't really care. Nate comes over, for example, he's ready to ask to take on more responsibility, stop being the intern, to which Walton replies, soy latte. That's the kind of person he is. That's the kind of person we're dealing with. So when the reporter arrives and completely is not bought in by this facade of how great Walton believes himself to be, reporter Chris, you get an up from me. We get a little bit more exposition here. For example, Chris the Journo realizes that from the body cam footage of the first responders who discovered Daily's corpse, that there was a DNA cloning device sitting on Daily's desk. Cole, who is of course nervous that she's going to be found out for her part in Daily's death, has hacked the cameras of this office, is listening to everything, and finally now twigs what Daily was doing with the DNA samples she discovered in his apartment. Back in the game, they found their next mark, so Cole and Nate are getting ready to beam down to a planet to, well, kill and rob her. Okie dokie, these are our heroes. Gotta remember that. But what we do get is an up in the form of Billy Magnuson's Carl, who returns and is just that person walking through the room who doesn't know what's going on. And he's a breath of fresh air in the scenes that he's in. For as oafish as he is in the real world office, we get another gag where he leaves his gym bag out. This time he trips up Cole. Here, he just sort of wants something to do. He's bored. He never gets to go on away missions. He doesn't get to do any of the jobs around the bridge. And it does seem like after 18 months, you think you might have given him something to do. So when he gets to sit in the chair, I kind of feel a bit of a, yeah, go on, Carl, good for you. There's an interesting change that you really see here as well. As USS Callister 1, shall we say, was coming to a close, every one of these people who was alive at that point was desperate to die. Now they're desperate to live. That's what the whole robbing people is about. But also in the character of Carl, he's so bored with just existing, he's not living. And he is not so easily distracted like Elena and Kabir are by watching The Real Housewives of Atlanta. Just doesn't do it for him. Which is why he foolishly plays with the chair when he shouldn't. If he does ask if he can say the thing, Nicole says no, she says the thing. That's her thing. But he does, he flips up the little control panel on the captain's chair, which I'm getting real Next Generation Season 1 vibes off that one. Or even, actually, a bit like Lorca, Season 1 of Discovery with his wee little controls on his chair as well. And he sends out an invite. Carl. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I have made that mistake. Out in the real world, we cut back to real Carl, who's just sitting there eating some cereal and is the one who informs Walton that Kabir has quit, or as per the post-it stuck to his monitor, Great. And then we get a seriously panicking Walton as well. Panicking Walton is both really enjoyable to watch, and also, I don't want to be around him when he's panicking, because the first person that he will screw over is the closest person to him. He's that kind of character. I do like the muttering where he's like, I need a go bag, passport. I know, I'll go to Belize. You are possibly looking at a picture of me in Belize, which was this year. How often do I get to say, oh, I was in that place where that person was talking about? On the ship, Carl has sent his invite, and we get Metallica fan taken up. That ship looks cool. It looks angry. It looks like it's staring at us. I get real USS Intrepid vibes from Picard's 3rd season here. Even I groaned. Mate, everyone knows at least one Metallica song. Everyone knows everything else matters. It does give us a handy little red alert, which is, you know, if you've ever watched Star Trek and something's happened, you're familiar with this red alert. Down on the planet, Cole and Nate are traipsing through this forest, very evocative of Discovery's 5th season with Burnham and Saru's last mission together under the twin moons. They are honing in on this other player who, she is a lot more than they bargained for. She does knock down without a fight. She is ready to kick 7 levels of crap out of both of them, and it really does sound like she's gonna win. They do manage to, I guess, overpower her, but she just keeps respawning. They are fighting a losing battle from the beginning, and both get injured in the course of this fight. They have to really struggle to survive. At one point, Cole, who is dead to rights by Pixie Bunkin, just says, just kill me and get it over with. And of course the player, thinking it's just a game, is like, you are really dramatic, but yeah, all right then. And is then killed from behind by Nate. It's one thing that this episode does very well is show the disconnect between those who are fighting for their lives and those who are fighting for some points. It's really well done. They do manage to get back to that transport portal, and yes, I did pick up on that blue ring, by the way. Even I got that one. They then beam back aboard the Callister, they put the credit chip into their ship, and they manage to fly away. We get a couple of ups in quick succession. In the real world, Cole, concerned about the legality of her implication with Robert Daly's death, goes to Walton and says, I think I can help, but I will need unrestricted access to the servers, which Walton just okays without any kind of thought. Here we get a little bit of a payoff to that when going through the complaints that Kabir was being sent. Oh, the Easter eggs, by the way. As always, folks, I go through the Easter eggs with a bit more detail at the end of the episode, so do stick around for that. If you think there's something I'm missing, like a reference to a certain original series episode, stick around for the Easter eggs at the end. She goes into Walton's office and explains to him that, yes, she knows Daly was keeping clones on his computer because she's one of them. She's now seen footage logged by Pixie Bunkin of the fight with herself. So she then speaks to Walton, she explains what happened, we get a little bit more backstory. I think I'll do this here. Down for the amount of time that this hour-and-a-half episode spends going, hey, do you remember the first episode? If you were to trim a lot of the exposition backstory from this, maybe you wouldn't lose a half an hour, but you would bring the runtime down considerably. And it does get a bit heavy. Myself and Chris, as we were watching this together, we messaged and I said, it takes a while to really get going. I'd say from here, it gets going, kind of. This is sort of the last big exposition dump. But there's a lot of it in the first third. As part of this exposition dump as well, I have another down for Walton. He's a scumbag. You won't catch me going, oh, actually, there's some redeeming, but he's not quite as idiotic as he's presented here. I was blackmailed with some images. Can I see the images? It might help me understand. Mate. You know, yeah, you're a dickhead, but you're not Quagmire. Back on the ship, when it's at warp, we get this explanation of, wow, that looks really cool. It's kind of nothing. It's the loading screen. That's an up. I like that. Very reminiscent of Kelvin warp, and that entire, you know, the NavCom section is very reminiscent of even as the Enterprise looked in the cage. They're coming through with the references, taking fast here. In their frustration and in their annoyance, everyone is just talking over each other, and then Carl, of all, comes out with this great idea. Why don't we just go back to where we were? It's actually not a terrible idea. If they can go back in, at least they won't have to deal with all of these other players who are trying to kill them the whole time and trying to take their resources and steal pretty much like what they're doing, but for them it's life and death. Back inside Daly's private server, there's no one else. Up to Carl. We get a slightly important thing for the plot here, which is that Walton has a room on the ship. That's quickly explained that at least one particle of the Walton in the game must have survived, therefore the ship knew to keep a room for him. This is really good. This is good news. Down in the however many time it's been, no one walked the ship. Only Carl knew he had a room. No, that doesn't work for me. At least it sets us off in the direction of finding the Walton who may have respawned inside the game. Out in the real world, for brevity, and I realize I just complained about backstory and padding time, is Daly's death suspicious or not? Why does Walton have his home computer? So it's clearly there's illegal tech in the cloning machine. We know that. This was discussed earlier on. Did Walton pay somebody off? He does say, you know, intellectual property, it reverts to me, I'm the owner. Okay, but you found a dead body in front of it. Dead body connected to the technology that connects you to the Infinity game. Down, it's too much of a logical leap to just, oh, I have his stuff. It's obviously done for saving time. There is one thing I will give it up to. I like the fact that the camera pans out at one point to remind us all they're in a glass office that is not soundproof and there's somebody else sitting in that room. These are not, I won't say they're not smart people because Cole is a genius at coding, but maybe see the world around you? As awful as he is, I do kind of like the recurring gag that Walton hasn't a clue who works for him. Who's Carl? Up. In the game, we go back to the rocks. Now, it's different from the Vasquez rocks-ish inspired of the first one, but you can definitely see there's a common theme going on here. And we get game Walton returns, which is nice because I like Jimmy Simpson and I wanted to go on like Jimmy Simpson, and it was starting to get a bit tough. This version of Walton is an up from me. Very clearly inspired by Castaway Tom Hanks, so I like the fact that a Star Trek adjacent property took the time to remind us of Tom Hanks, who one day will be in Star Trek. It was nearly there. First Contact, it was nearly there. Love you, James Cromwell, by the way. Nearly had him. Also reminding us of just this trend of duplicating people in Star Trek. We had the episode Second Chances with Riker. We had, going back to the original series, The Enemy Within. Kirk gets a double. And then jumping forward to Lower Decks, Boimler gets a double, which becomes somewhat important as the show goes along. Cole beams down to the planet to talk to him, and we get one of the funniest moments of the episode, which is Walton, who's been alone for so long as, oh, thank God, it's nice to see you. Up. Out in the real world, again, another proper laugh moment is when Cole has to show Walton how to use the nubbin to access the game. She goes, you just say, enter game, which she says and goes in. He goes, enter game as well. Up. In the game, Cole tells Walton that yes, they've come to take him away and it's all good. And he says, well, I can't leave without Rocky. Yep, obviously this is a reference to Wilson. And the great thing that's never discussed in the film Castaway is absolutely front and center here. Or should I say back and lower here. Rocky's got a hole in the back. Huh, I hadn't noticed. Dropped. Don't drop him on his face. Up. We finally get the meeting between the Coles and the Waltons here. They arrive in very 1950s retro futuristic space suits and they look ridiculous, but it's good fun. Cole understands how traumatized her digital clone must be and approaches carefully, and they quickly come to an understanding between them. I'm you, I'm also you, I'm the real you. That's subjective. I like that. But there's no, I'm the real me, there's none of that, which I very much appreciate here. And Walton walks in and doesn't give less of a crap, because he knows he's in a fantasy world. None of this matters to him. He is once again the king of his scenario. Up to the whole exchange. We beam up to the ship and we begin to learn about what's the best thing to do next. And Walton starts edging closer and closer to Pinky Bunkin's gun. Walton kills Carl. Dick. Walton here is clearly being set up as this episode's Robert Daly. Very different in how he goes about things, but you begin to understand that he is no better than Daly. He might have a different motive. For him, it seems to be money, power, sex, control. It's just as uncomfortable, but there's more sleaze. Whereas Daly had a very different kind of deplorable side. Walton is the more stereotypical, just you wouldn't want to go near him at any point. This is matched not only in the game, but in the real world, because after Walton kills Carl and comes out of the game, Nanette follows him. She has the wherewithal to grab the few bits of evidence that she has and start making her way toward the exit. He follows. He's begging her not to expose him. That money, how much money does she want? It's no problem. He will do anything. And we get, I can't believe I'm saying this, up to the surprise of her getting run down by that car. This is a trope that happens all the time. The one that jumps into my mind straight away is the first Final Destination movie. But it does properly come as a bit of a surprise here, and an effective one, because she is the only one outside the game who understands the stakes that we're talking about here. And to have her so brutally taken down like that, you'd still know it's the beginning of the end for Walton. I mean, the first thing he does is grab her bag and run away from the scene of an accident. There's no way he comes out of that looking well. But here you just wonder, how much damage can he do in the meantime? He is now a cornered animal, and I don't want to deal with somebody like that. In the game, good Walton, we'll call him, again, Jimmy Simpson, he's knocking it out of the park here. Good Walton gives us our backstory. He says it began 12 years ago, because he's explaining what's in the server core. Center of everything? It's Shakari. It just looks a lot different in this one. Here it looks like a kind of a typical suburban neighborhood. You have Walton driving a car with the license plate, Walt Dog, you prick, take it up. Here we get his first meeting with a returning Jesse Plemons. Now, taken up for everything that we do not like about the Robert Daly character, the episode, good as it is, becomes so much better with Jesse Plemons' return. I think it was a great idea to keep his return a surprise, although it was becoming increasingly obvious that he was going to make an appearance. But in a good way, it was handled well. Like, they were laying the groundwork. Basically, Chekhov's Daly was turning up at some point. You see Walton walk around Daly's garage and, like I said, come back for the Easter eggs. There's a lot of them, and there's one that I think you know I was like, yes! They talk, and quickly they strike up a business relationship. This Daly is very amenable. He's very, I just want to please. He has created something amazing in the world of Infinity. And of course, what's the first thing Walton wants? More. He wants more. We see that Walton moved into Daly's garage with him and they work together, and Walton is so frustrated so quickly by the speed at which Daly is working, to which Daly utters the immortal line, "There's only one of me." Hey, remember that DNA cloning device? In one of the more uncomfortable moments in a film that's got a few uncomfortable moments in it, don't get me wrong, down this DNA cloning machine came from the porn industry. We all know what that is meant to insinuate. Walton goes as far as to say that you could have your own personal plaything. There is a way, there are many ways in fact, of making ethical pornography. This is not one of them. the insinuation is so far beyond disturbing that, because we know what Daly did that with that technology in USS Callister. It is horrific, it is disgusting. There is a way of making ethical pornography. This is not it. Out in the real world, a panicking Walton rings Kabir in the middle of the night to ask how to get back into the game. And we get this kind of funny exchange where Kabir is like, "You don't know the first thing about your product, do you?" And explains how to get back in, which is one of the most basic parts of Infinity, and where he will arrive once he gets back in. Now, this is very important information and explains why Walton has a room on the USS Callister. Still think it was a bit suspect that nobody but Carl noticed it was there. In the game, the USS Callister has arrived at this whopper construction, which Walton says is set dressing. Basically, all it is just to trap Daly's consciousness inside, although we don't technically discover that until she beams down, but we know he's there. It looks very like, imagine a ringed version of a Dyson sphere, perhaps the version that we saw in Star Trek Discovery as opposed to the version that we saw in The Next Generation. It's also very like Nidavellir from the Avengers Infinity War as well, with those big giant rings. Either way, it's pretty awe-inspiring, so it does its job well. Taken up. In the game, our digital clones try to contact the real-world Nanette again, only to discover that she's now in St. Juniper Hospital. Cole is devastated, but we do get that great line from Elena saying, "We never use the phone to dial outside." It's very like, you know, Doctor Who never uses a phone, but also really reminds me of that scene from season 4 where they use the phone to get outside the universe, like the subwave network operated by Harriet Jones, former Prime Minister. But I'm sure you knew who she was. Fairly devastated by the discovery that her real-world counterpart is all but brain dead, Cole beams into this server and finds herself outside Daly's house. There's a lot in this scene. Just first of all, up overall. This is Cole confronting her abuser. Not just the Daly who controls everything, but the physical embodiment of the one who took away her agency, stripped away parts of her body, and is directly responsible for her current life. There is, however, a beautiful moment in the beginning of this scene. As the garage door opens, Daly is bent over his desk, creating a landscape for a world. This, combined with Daniel Pemberton, with the returning composer's music, is a stunning little moment of tranquility and awe in this film. It's an absolute up from me. This image, this idea of creating worlds like this, very reminiscent of games like No Man's Sky or Starfield, for example. He seems surprised to see her because he's been alone for a very long time, and here again we get this idea of time moves differently inside the game. For him, he says it feels like it's been about 500 years. Up on the ship, game Walton has gone to meditate and clear his head. Real world Walton has popped back inside and bludgeons himself on the back of the head with Rocky, and he's got a sticky thumb. Up. He goes aboard the bridge with the express intent of inviting all of the players that these clones have attacked and stolen from, and exposes himself almost immediately by ordering a coffee from Nate. Nate twigs it like that. He's like, "What's my first name?" He knows it's not their Walton. And I love that they do that. There's none of this, we're gonna play around and maybe he gets away. No, they know him well enough. And Nate remembers the poor treatment well enough. It's done so well. Unfortunately, Walton does manage to get that invite out before he exits the game, which leaves the USS Callister in a bit of a pickle. In the server, this version of Daly seems a lot nicer. As we were going through, we asked ourselves the question, can you trust someone when you've seen what a bit of power does to them? This Daly, although earlier in his life, despite the 500 years, but this is a Daly 12 years or 11 years earlier than the one we met in USS Callister. Is this one of those there but for the grace of situations? Is this Daly capable of being a good person, or is he fundamentally the same monster that we met previously? There is a few clues First, after Cole explains their situation, he comes up with a solution and says, okay, well, where are you in the real world? And she says, St. Juniper Hospital. And he's like, there you go, there's the feed. And so he sees that the real world counterpart is effectively brain dead. So he teases her with the idea of, well, instead of going to a server, wouldn't you just like to go outside? And full circle, what did Cole say in the beginning? If I could just push a button and go back to my real life, I would. She is then offered a choice. The choice is go with your crew into the server, or just you survive by going into the real world. Make the choice. This is from so many bloody Star Trek episodes, this morality play. It's an up, and Daly does it so well. There is little moments through this as well where Plemons just plays it so carefully and so quietly, where Daly's mask just slips a little bit. When she says, I don't watch those old shows, you can see he doesn't take that well. And listen, sometimes people talk about Star Trek in a way that I don't take very well. I react differently. She does, however, pass his test. She says, save the crew. Save the crew. And it's a big moment. Here she is offered the chance, and she says she picks the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. You know that's enough. He smiles because she passed his test, and it's very like the Xanthian test that was set in one of these Space Fleet stories. I like stories, he says. We're gonna come back to that. On the ship, Game Walton, very disappointed in himself. And you know what? Simpson plays it well. He's sitting there in the command seat, even though, I mean, really Nate's the one in control here, but still. And it's very like when Spock takes command after Kirk goes down his nonsense missions. I like it. He's even got the blue. Just an up from me. Out in space, all of the players that were affected, shall we say, by the Callister's fight for survival have all converged on the same spot. We get Jonathan. He gets killed. And then his mum tells him not to swear, and he tells her to f off. Don't talk to your mum that way, Jonathan. While the Callister is fighting for its life, Cole and Daly seem to be, yeah, it's all good. She's like, great, okay, here's what we'll do. Just send them over, he can push a button, everyone's happy out, they're in the new server, cool, copy and paste. No, sorry Daly, you mean cut and paste. He's like, no, copy should be fine. It all crashes down. Up for how uncomfortable this scene is. In a split second, Daly reveals himself to her. He's going to keep at least a version of her with himself. And there wouldn't even be any funny stuff, you know, not unless she wanted. Things only go from bad to worse from here on out. She very much tries to get him to understand that he does not suit the power he wields. That Daly, that she knew when presented with the power to control others, abused it and became a monster. This Daly doesn't like that. He can't handle it. He doesn't want to keep hearing her. He does that. Her voice is just gone because he seals her mouth. It's like the scene from the first one, where in that one he takes her face. Here he just takes her ability to communicate with him. It's very like, you know, The Matrix, Mr. Anderson. Oh, it's an up. I just have written down on my notes, he's back. Plemons plays it perfectly, as does Kristen Milotti, and I really did not enjoy this scene. So myself and Chris agreed that just for these two, we're not doing, for example, a Latinum up or a Trillium down. If there was to be a Latinum up, it would be Jesse Plemons. So I'm giving him an up again. There, 2 ups. You may be happy with that now, Jesse. But he is so good in being bad that I really was quite happy when Cole picks up the Bargradian knife and chucks it at his head. Bye! Wait, what do you mean his consciousness was required to keep the game intact? To escape, Cole kills Daly, And now this seems to be the end of Daly. Well, we might have thought that last time as well. But no, he seems to be properly dead now. But that means, yes, infinity comes crashing down around everything. She is desperately trying to find the correct floppy disk, remember them, that she can pop into the computer to then transfer her consciousness and the crew's consciousness over into a private server. Everything whites out and the crew's alive. Cole's alive in the real world. Fantastic. This is wonderful news. Cole punches a nurse. She stumbles toward the bathroom, looks at herself in the mirror, and we see the crew is looking through her eyes. I think I know where everyone's ended up. In the offices of Callister, Walton is having a bit of a mare because what does fatal content error mean? Kabir knows, because he tells him. Infinity's gone. Not just down, it's gone. The game is deleted. And just behind Walton's panicked face, you can see what looks like his stock value drops into the red. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Things pretty quickly wrap up after that. Walton is exposed for his part in, well, just everything. We see that on the news. And Cole is in her apartment, fairly near Manhattan, sharing her brain with Elena, Nate, Dudani, and good Walton. She is working on getting them out, but there's always time for little Real Housewives of Atlanta. And that brings us to the end of USS Callister into Infinity. Would you kindly join me at Cetacean Observations? We get a reminder of the Charlie X face removal in the very beginning. We see shots of Nanette in the tank top, which seems to be very deliberate of referencing Captain Janeway. The title card, of course, is very reminiscent of the Kelvin universe. That font, Fresno Black, looks very similar to the Kelvin universe font. We have our Star Wars references that I mentioned earlier as well. We also have that shout out to Wrexham FC. And of course, this references well to credits throughout. Now, don't get me wrong, I know credits and microtransactions, as I've discussed, are very much a part of gaming. But within the world of Black Mirror, it made me think of the season 1 episode 15 Million Merits. Out in the real world, we see the list of users who are making complaints about the game to Kabir. We get Mohawk Rex, Cowboy 3000, Ninja the Killer, Full Metal F*** It, Alice 131013, we have Pi Ape, we have Wraith, God Emperor Smart, and Dead Set 666. Now, in there, we've got a bunch of references. For example, Dead Set is the series that Charlie Brooker worked on years ago. Little avatars as zombie. If you haven't seen Dead Set, it's excellent, especially if you watched any of Big Brother in the 2000s. Full Metal F*** It seems to be a reference to Metalhead, which is from season 4 of Black Mirror as well, which is one of the scariest episodes. God Emperor Smart, reference to Michael Smart, who knows? Mohawk Rex, of course, being Jonathan, who was a very bad boy. When Walton is being interviewed by Chris the Journo, he calls out Batman and Robin. He's Batman, of course. When Cole and Nate are beaming down to the forest planet, Carl straight away goes, can I say the thing? Where in 2017, this might have been an accidental reference to all of the engage, hit it, punch it references through all of the captains of Starfleet. Here in 2025, it seems like a fairly flippant, deliberate reference to all of that. We see the Omni Recorder returns again, the ring for teleporting. I'm aware the game Portals exists. The Callister is very outmatched and outgunned. This is very reminiscent of Season 3 particularly, but of Enterprise overall in the NX-01. Real Housewives of Atlanta gets more than a passing reference. We see footage from it. The Captain's Chair, again, very reminiscent of the original series Captain's Chair, but this time with added controls thrown in, very like Season 1 of The Next Generation. Jumping to Hyper Warp afterwards, Warp obvious, and also Hyperdrive. I see you, Star Wars reference. We get another list of usernames. Mass Defect, Mass Effect, featuring a lot of Star Trek actors. Brinksman, Crud Bucket, Murder Machine. All right, Murder Machine, I see you at 28 minutes and 19 seconds. If you pause the screen, do you know what Murder Machine has in the subject of their email? Stop pausing and watch the show. They saw me coming. On their way to pick up in-game Walton, Cole says, set sail. Her version of engage. I like that. I like that. Once we get there, I've mentioned already, of course, but the duplication idea, the castaway idea. Then we get our backstory where we go into the Daly's garage. We have the shuttlecraft Goddard from The Next Generation. Taken up, of course we do. Never had that Playmates model, but I still love it. The Bargradian Cutlass, very Klingon in its inspiration, of course. Those phasers from the first, well, I'm calling them phasers anyway, but from the first USS Callister. All of the VHS, DVD, Blu-ray that we talked about before. Very AMT-inspired models. Model builders out there will know AMT. Actually, fun fact, the Klingon D7 battlecruiser was designed by AMT to have something to sell before it appeared in Star Trek. Fun fact. Board game, very 60s style. Elena's boots are sitting on a shelf. A book entitled Bandersnatch. So for the Black Mirror fans out there, which I would assume you are if you're watching this, you know that there was the interactive movie Bandersnatch that came out between seasons. The Callister model, very reminiscent of Eaglemoss fan home corgi reproductions as well. The hospital that Cole ends up in is St. Juniper. Well, of course, that is a reference to San Junipero, which probably is my favorite episode of Black Mirror overall, because I just love it. On the cover of one of the comics is a metal killer dog, another shout out to Metalhead, that episode from season 4. In Walton's office, you see on the wall, you've got magazine covers like Edge, Wired, Time featuring his face. We also saw PC Zone. In a previous episode this season, Plaything, so do keep an eye out for that. Charlie Brooker used to work for PC Zone. Fun fact, back in 2004, they were bought by Future Publishing. They are the people who pay me to talk about Star Trek for a living. So yeah, listen, I'm going to shout them out. Because speaking of Future Publishing, keep an eye out for SFX Magazine, which is doing a lot of Black Mirror coverage this month. magazinesdirect.com/SFX. Just saying, support print media. While we're on the topic of other episodes of the season, check out Hotel Reverie as well, a very Otoy, holodeck, Truman Show inspired story. When this mass invite goes out to all of the players, the one we know as Pixie Bunkin has Ashley O on the wallpaper of her computer. That is from the earlier Black Mirror episode with Miley Cyrus, who played, it was me, you, and Ashley too. Boom. We referenced, of course, earlier the morality play that Daly does, very Star Trek with the Xanthian test. When some of the ships are being destroyed up in space, we get a Willem scream. Don't think I didn't hear you, Willem scream. One of the oldest pieces of Hollywood trope in the book. Believe me, you know the sound. In Daly's office, we see obviously Space Fleet is everywhere. The in-universe company Tuckersoft, which featured in Bandersnatch as well, and also Plaything, made a Space Fleet game. We saw the posters for it in Plaything. This, according to Chris, is very reminiscent of 80s and 90s Trek, back when Trek games were good, I am told. Last but not least, as is always the case, keep an eye on the ticker tape at the bottom of news stories, for example, because as Walton's being arrested, we see that a talisman was found in plane wreckage, surely a reference to Demon 79. Also directed by Toby Haynes, this earlier episode of Black Mirror. Hotel Reverie reboot hits Streamberry. Thronglets 2 launches to critical acclaim from Plaything. Was Thronglets 1 ever even launched? We have the Rivermind Chief Technical Officer steps down, a reference to the episode Common People from this season as well. And because Charlie Brooker apparently will never let this one die, former Prime Minister Michael Callow enters Celebrity Vet School. That is such an up from me. That is everything for the ups and downs for the USS Callister into infinity. As of the recording of this video, I am certain Metallica fan is another vocal cameo, like the one we got of Aaron Paul in part 1. I was not able to identify who it was though, so I'm looking forward to seeing who that was, quite frankly. And also Toby Haynes, who directed this and the first part as well, is still attached to direct a Star Trek film, so I'm looking forward to seeing when he gets his actual hands on the property. Thank you so much everyone for watching along. We really, really appreciate it. Please make sure you're subscribed and make sure you're following us on the various socials. We're at TrekCulture, at TrekCultureYT on Instagram. I've been at Sean Ferrick and Chris is at EditChrisEdit as well. Do keep dropping your suggestions into the comments for other content that you would like to see. We do read them. Thank you very much. You are wonderful. We will see you again soon, my friends. Live long and prosper.